As we stand here today, South Africa is in a deep constitutional crisis. And when I say a deep constitutional crisis, I mean that the leading individuals placed in the positions which must ensure that the Constitution is complied with by each and every citizen are the principals who are undermining that Constitution. A consequence of which subcultures of undermining the Constitution have developed in society. Subcultures such as theft of public funds is a subculture. Subcultures of violating the rights of individuals, men, women, children. It's a subculture. All of these subcultures are as a result of the fact that the principal objective which South Africa set itself when President Mandela signed at Sharpeville the Constitution as the guiding document for all of us South Africans. That document is being undermined day in and day out. It's being undermined by ministers of state. It's being undermined by the principal leader of the nation, the president of the country. And that's a huge constitutional crisis that we find ourselves in. But we formed the Congress of the People in defense of the Constitution because we had formed a sense that this paramount document, the paramount agreement of the people of South Africa was now under threat. That threat has grown over time up to where we are now. Secondly, our country is in a deep fiscal, which means financial crisis. South Africa has no money. As at the time when we took power, we owed a certain international debt. In the 15 years that President Mandela, President Thabo Mbeki, and President Thabo Mbeki led the country, we had managed to eliminate that debt significantly. In fact, every year, we had surplus resources available to meet the needs of the people of our country. And there was clarity about the fact that in the years that lay ahead, we would begin to take in taxes from the people, and those taxes would be applied to the needs of the people of the country. That we would not have to go and borrow from anybody, and we would finish off whatever was outstanding in terms of the debt our country had at that time. Today, 6 or 7 years since the departure of President Thabo Mbeki, our country is in debt by more than 1.5 trillion rand. It means the money that we had in the fiscus is all finished and gone. That we have built a debt that every year we are only paying now interest on the debt. We are not paying the debt back. We are only paying the debt. What this really means is that every year, as indeed will happen this year that is going to come in about 2 weeks' time, we will have all the money that the citizens have contributed by way of tax. it will be less than the money we need to address the needs of the people of our country. So we will be compelled, or government will be compelled to go and borrow more money in order to deal with the basic needs of the people of our country. So we have to go to Mashonisa. The nation must go to Mashonisa. Some more. We already owe Mashonisa, but we must go and borrow more. It sounds, I'm saying Mashonisa because it's the most practical way to help everybody understand the state in which we are. It's not an amusing thing. It's a disastrous setup. The rand has just been degraded, and as it is now, we can be degraded again. The bodies that degrade a country are now saying, we just want to see, we really just are giving you a chance and see what, but we'll probably have to degrade again. That's how serious the situation is. The third thing is that there is a crisis in society. Communities are up in arms for services. Whether it's electricity, it's water, it's sewage services, virtually everything, everywhere, everybody is angry about something that is not available. So there is a generalized social crisis in society. We don't know when we live here whether there will be electricity through the night, whether we'll be able to bake cakes and things like this. This state of affairs is a dangerous one. Can we put off all our cell phones? And that gives me a chance to put also mine off. Because I came here late. We are late because I was late. And that's because I got caught up in an accident. Let's please just put the cell phones off. I'll try and make this thing fairly short. Now, the constitutional crisis I spoke about also breaks down into a political crisis. The political crisis we are now faced with is that Parliament, the highest institution in any country, is essentially now dysfunctional. It is unable to manage its work daily. Indeed, if, as things stand, when we go back to Parliament, or if Parliament were to be called today, at least 20 members of Parliament would not be able to take their seats in Parliament. And so the biggest institution in the land is operating minus 20 of its members because they have been ruled out. Unless something happens, that is the situation. There are others who are likely to appear before disciplinary hearings, and that number will probably increase. But the fact that Parliament, the highest institution in the land, that sets standards, that must maintain them, that makes laws, must enforce them, and all of that is in a state in which it is one of the most devastating commentary on the state our nation finds itself in. And because of that, you have to try and look and explain, but how does it come that that situation is like this? So we cannot but take our eyes away from the members of society are beginning to look around, are asking themselves, if we can't look to Parliament and see solutions and answers to the problems that our country is faced with, we must look somewhere else. Where can we find the answer? So some of the people now are looking in the trade unions to see whether the trade unions might not solve the problem which has now descended on the nation. Some are looking at some of these meetings or conferences that are happening. The call for a united front by NUMSA, the need now to leave Parliament and try and resolve the problems of the Tripartite Alliance and all of that is because the center is no longer holding. The center is no longer holding. For those who are old enough, in the closing years of the apartheid regime, they can very definitely recall that as the crisis of apartheid deepened, this situation arose. P.W. Botha, with the colored and Indian parliamentarians, were sitting there. The Bantustan leaders were scattered all over and so on, each one of them saying their say. There was no center that one looked at. A consequence of which, the people, of course, organized a united front called the United Democratic Front, and it was making its calls. These voices at various points in society were demanding attention, and increasingly, people forgot that there's something called Parliament. And now people are listening more and responding to what the United Democratic Front was saying, what the liberation organizations that were in exile were saying, and indeed, Van Zyl Slabbert, who was the leader of the official opposition at that time, the PFP, resigned the Parliament, and said, no, this whole thing that's going on here means nothing, and came and joined extra-parliamentary politics, and joined those who went to Dakar to go and discuss the question of the release of the political prisoners with Oliver Tambo. Some went to Harare. These meetings were happening everywhere. And P.W. Botha was talking to an empty, meaningless Parliament. Now, I don't know, but think about it. Now we go into Parliament. The president of the country is not in the Parliament. He's not coming there. He's not talking. He's talking from anywhere and everywhere, from Australia, from this country, from that, except from where he should be talking from inside of Parliament. That's the kind of crisis situation that South Africa is faced with. But no society can be run and can go on in this way. So it is important that we are able to say how to respond to the situation. Mr. Memela, I think it is, wrote an article this past week saying that there are those who are now attacking the legacy of Nelson Mandela himself, talking about how that the constitution he had signed was a sellout, and so on and so on. So if that was a sellout, what are South Africans left with? What did we achieve if that is so? Those of us in the Congress of the People who said as early as when we did that we are branching out to form the Congress of the People, and we said in defense of the Constitution, the greatest achievement of the people of South Africa, to which we all collectively, black and white, mandated Nelson Mandela to sign that constitution as an agreement on which we would build a future South Africa. That remains our commitment. It remains the commitment of the Congress of the People. If that is not so, if that can be nullified, not only will it mean that the 27 years of Nelson Mandela's life in South Africa's prisons, including I don't know how many years and lives and blood that was spilled of the people of South Africa to achieve democratization, the national reconciliation of the people of our country, to place it where today the whole world is saying there's no example to equal what South Africans have achieved. We meet here now on the 16th of December this year. The biggest challenge is how to salvage Nelson Mandela's legacy. The achievement, the greatest achievement of the people of South Africa. How to save that. How to reground it. And it's a difficult path ahead. Apart from the issues I've already referred to in terms of the resources of the nation, in terms of all of this, there are all kinds of tensions rising in our society. Because people always try to explain, when they have difficulties, they always try to explain that, how did it come? What is the cause of this problem? One of the things that is emerging is that there are racial tensions that are rising in our society. Now, the most dangerous thing is this. The fact that these racial tensions are rising and one cannot ignore them. Because even the leaders, people in leadership positions of society, are making statements which generate these racial tensions, tribal tensions. Where Nelson Mandela was continuously speaking about national reconciliation, bringing together the people of South Africa, making it possible for the people, all of the people of South Africa, to rise out of the backwardness and the poverty and the squalor that apartheid had created, but that we must rise up together. Now we don't hear that kind of sentiment much more now. We are now hearing more about who has benefited more, or who must give our money back to us, who must give land, we must take land from so and so. We must do, and once you do that, you are now saying that land in this country does not belong to all the people. Because if you want to take land from somebody and give it to somebody else, you are now already nullifying the meaning of the Constitution that the land belongs to the people of South Africa, that we all have equal rights, etc. But these tensions are building up, these tensions are rising. Indeed, there are even suggestions that we should be looking to the example of one of the countries north of this country, which can only spell disaster. But these racial tensions are not unique and peculiar to South Africa. History has got lots of examples where, when leaders of certain countries were unable to explain the difficulties of those countries, they blamed other people, other human beings. You only have to think back to the Second World War. How that Hitler blamed the Jewish people for whatever economic difficulties Germany was faced with. And that soon led to the slaughter of innocent men and women, some 6 million of them, only because they were Jews. Not because they had done anything. The economic problems of the country had nothing to do with the Jews, who were in any event a minority, who were not even governing that country. You have to look to examples of countries like Rwanda, only now in 1994, where when the country was unable to, or leaders were unable to explain the difficulties that the country was faced with, economic, educational, and other things, the minority Tutsi were made the scapegoat. And in 3 months, 1 million of them were wiped off the face of the earth. Now, these racial tensions are being generated amongst the people of our country that we were so thrilled after we negotiated CODESA and President Mandela signed at Sharpeville the Constitution into law, that those we had gone through that, we had passed through it. The challenge now was how to ensure that we provide what President Mandela said as a better life for all. Well, every weekend now we read the newspapers and we hear about how many millionaires and billionaires have emerged. And we read at the same time about just how many increasing numbers of the people of our country are going down deeper into poverty. It's inevitable, therefore. This country abandoned the road President Mandela placed us on some time ago, and is now going very fast, this route that can only lead us to a disastrous end. So on the 16th of December of this year, we need to return to the people to say the route that our country is on now is one of a disastrous nature. That we need the people of our country to be confronted with the hard realities and truth about the state of affairs in this country and about how this must be done. We have pointed out the reason the money has gone is because at the present time we have a cabinet, an executive that is bigger than ever before. Huge amounts of money that should be addressing the needs of the people of the country are going into the pockets, into the salaries of the president, the ministers, deputy ministers. Huge amounts. That the administration has become even bigger. We have a country with the executive, if you include the deputy ministers, of some 72 ministers and deputy ministers. 72. This is, I think when the cabinet is sitting, you must, if you're a president, you might need a binocular to see how the people look there, because some of them are so far away from you to see them. Do you know that when South Africa, every year, when South Africa has paid the executive, well, let me say, when it has paid the executive and the administration, therefore, when it has paid public servants and the executive, provinces and everything, when it has paid the interest on the money we owe, and when it has paid grants The people that are given grants, that we pay grants every month now, 16 million. When we have paid these three things as a nation, South Africa is left with 25% of its total budget. These three things, items, consume 75% of the income, of the tax paid, and all of the resources available. And after you have paid all of that 75%, you are now left with 25% to provide for schools, health, any other of the needs of the people of the country. We need to be able to go and say to the people of our country, President Mandela governed South Africa with 28 ministers and 5 or so deputy ministers, and saved a huge amount of money for provision of services to the people. Now that money that used to go to the services of the people has now been taken over. There's appointed, all kinds of people are appointed and whatnot, and paid huge amounts of monies and so on. And there's nothing to do for the people of the country. We need to do something about this. And we need to be able to go and say to our people, you must vote for people who will be able to run this country with an executive, national, provincial, local government that will not consume these huge amounts of resources by itself. Who will be able to attract foreign investments of such size and capacity as to provide large numbers of jobs. The reason people want grants, because there's no jobs. And there will be no jobs if government does not create a climate that attracts investors. There will be no jobs if you say to small business people who want to start a business, you must pay very high minimum wages. Then they can't start the business. And even the guy who will be happy to earn 1,100 rands, at least to put some food on the table for the family. If you deny that guy a job, you must give them money free. And the grants must be like that. But if there's no jobs, there are fewer numbers of people who will pay tax. If the people have no work, you can't charge them tax. Because what will they pay it with? If there are jobs and everybody is employed, then people can pay tax, and then you will have more money to deal with the needs of the people. But if you continue to make people voting fodder, say, no, just stay at home, I'll give you this, and when elections come, I'll give you 12 kilograms of millimit so that you can vote for me again. They will do it. But as the numbers of those who are employed decreases and decreases, there will soon enough be nobody or not enough numbers to pay tax for you to give out grants. And then the crunch will have come. We need to be able to explain this in the mother tongue, to explain to the people these issues, and explain even for these ones who are benefiting from this corruption. I meet a lot of small business people that were benefiting from this, who now come to me and say, but you know, I did this thing for the government, but they haven't paid me now. I can't pay my people. My business is going under. I say, well, they can no longer pay you because the money that they used to have to pay you and all that, they have finished it. It's finished. They will not be able to pay you, so your business will collapse. It must collapse. There's no money hidden anywhere. And when it collapses, all of us are going to confront each other. The tensions, these racial tensions, these tensions that are rising of people, when people are not hungry and they have no jobs, they lose their rationality, they can't reason. And so they'll kill you for a 10 rands, they'll kill you for a 5 rands. They will kill their children. They will burn them in the house. They will do all these dangerous things because hunger is a process of slow death. And so people lose their rationality. And these subcultures I was talking about must increase. We must now think about this. Members and leaders of the Congress of the People must understand the struggle is not to get a position so that you can get a big salary, which is the culture the ruling party has created. It's not like that. All these people that are saying, I want to vote, we must vote, is people who are hoping that they will become members and then they are going to get money and they'll be there. Now, many of them who are there are getting the money for themselves. But what they don't see is that they are sitting on dolomite. They are eating from underneath their feet and they are going to fall into that trap themselves. We need men and women of conviction who understand that they must invest in the welfare of the people. If you invest in the people, the numbers, poor people, if you give to them an opportunity of survival, they, the people, will look after you. If you steal the money of the people, you take it from them, and you make yourself that with your family alone or relatives and so on, you may end up running out of the country because the people will come after you sooner or later. You have to understand this. Or you will end up and die in jail if you don't die at the hands of your own people who will be hungry, who will have lost their sense of reasoning. The struggle, therefore, to retain and sustain